video. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to create a table view with custom cells in Swift. So before we get started, I pulled up this in Google Images to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing basically. So if you don't know already, a table view is basically a list of cells. And we're going to basically be creating this, and in addition to that, today I'll be showing you how to create a custom cell. So if you open up like the Facebook app or the Instagram app or the WhatsApp app, you'll see that a lot of their apps are lists of cells or table views of custom cells. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So we're gonna start by creating a brand new Xcode project. We're gonna open Xcode and do create new project. We're gonna create a single view application. We're gonna call it test for the sake of this video. We're gonna ensure this is on Swift. We're gonna save it wherever we want, in this case our desktop. And we're gonna go into our view controller, and we're gonna start by declaring an outlet for our table view. Let me preface by saying that if you have an idea of like outlets and how to use a storyboard to a beginner's level, that's sufficient for this video. However, if you have any questions about anything that I kind of brush over or go through kind of quickly, don't hesitate to leave a comment so we can dive deeper in either another video or I can comment below and help clarify it for you. So we're going to start by creating an IB outlet, and of course Xcode doesn't really want to cooperate and give me autocomplete, but we're going to create a variable called TableView. It's going to be of type TableView, and before we go to our storyboard, we are basically going to tell the table view that will be its delegate and data source. Down here we're going to be implementing the table view protocol functions, which for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like an interface. In Java, that would be the equivalent, where we need to tell the table view how many rows it's going to have and how many, and for each row, what type of cell to return. So up here, we're going to specify the UI table view delegate and UI table view data source, and it's going to start complaining if we try to compile because we haven't conformed to these protocols. And the two functions that we're going to conform to that are required by the data source are number of rows, and we're just going to return 0 for now, and the other one is cell for row. Cell for row at index path. Cool. So these are the two functions we're going to need. What I'm also going to do up here is create an array of strings, which will be the thing that we're going to show in our custom cell. So basically we're laying the foundation of what our table view is essentially going to show. So let's do just an array of a couple strings here. Cool, that should be sufficient. Here we're going to basically return the count of that set array. And before we implement this, what I'm going to do now is head over to the storyboard. And once this loads up, we're going to add a table view onto our view controller by going up here, which will open up our library. And we're going to find a table view and drag it onto our view controller. We're going to add some constraints, basically pinning it to the sides of the screen at 0, 0, 0, 0. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to connect the outlet that we created called TableView to our table view. And before we create the custom cell, I want to quickly just show a standard cell and how we're going to change it to use our custom cell. So to do that, what we're going to do back here in the storyboard actually is create a prototype cell. And the way that I like to do it is tapping this table view and in the attributes, bumping this value, prototype cells, which we'll just add a cell in here. And on the cell, we need to specify an identifier. Let's call it cell for now. Let's head back to our view controller. And in our view controller, what we can do is we can get that cell with that identifier by dequeuing it. So we're going to say dequeue reusable cell with that identifier. at this index path. In addition, what we're going to do before returning said cell here is we're going to assign the cell's text label .text, and it's going to be the string at the nth position in the array. So to quickly recap, we have this array, and the table view basically calls this function for each of the indices in the number that we provided. So we provided array.count. So in essence, it'll be 5, right? So arrays are enumerated, of course, 0 upward, so 0 to 4 in this case. So this will basically be saying, hey, for index path at section 0, which is the first section, we only have one section of this table. Give me the row for position 0, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each time we're going to assign the text from that nth position in the array, so it'll be different. So if we actually quickly run this on a simulator, let's pick a different simulator, you'll see that we'll have a table view using the standard table view cell with this text. And after this, we'll be creating our own subclass of a table view cell, and I'll be showing you guys basically how you can create whatever type of cell you want. And it's fairly simple, but if we take a look, if we give this a second, there we go. We have our table view, we have our cells in it. It's showing a standard table view cell, and it's showing the strings that we have in this array. Cool stuff. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually go back to our storyboard, and we're going to remove this prototype cell because we're going to add one, a custom one. So we can go to this table view and actually just decrement this value, and that'll just get rid of it for us. You could just optionally delete it. I personally like to decrement it. We're going to create a new subclass of a table view cell. So new file, Cocoa Touch class. It's going to be in Swift, of course. It's going to be a UI table view cell, and I'll call this demo table view cell. Actually, just kidding. Before we click next, we're going to check this box to create a nib file where we will be designing our table view cell's UI and its content. Then we're going to click next, let it save. And you'll see it creates these two things for us. So the first one is the actual subclass of the UI table view cell, and this one is the nib. So what we're going to basically be doing is we're going to be designing a table view cell, and we're going to be telling our table view in the view controller for each of the cells use this type of cell. So what we're going to do for the sake of this video is we're going to create an image and a label on this cell, or we can do like 2 labels in an image, but I'll just do a label and an image for the sake of simplicity. And the image will just set a background color too, because we're not putting in images at the moment, but basically done the same way, where we're going to create an outlet, if I can spell outlet today, and basically we'll call this my label. It's going to be a UI label. Let's copy this and make this a UI image view, and we call it my image view. And what we're going to do here is we need to give the table view in this nib an identifier as well that we'll use in our table. And what I like to do, and what good convention is, it's a little bit subjective, is I like to give the identifier for this cell. I like to make it the same thing as the file name. So in this case, this identifier will be demo table view cell. Make sure you drop the .swift. We don't want to have the extension in there. So that'll be the identifier we use. We're going to add an image and a label to our cell, and I'm just going to put the image on the right and the label on the left for sake of differentiating it a little bit between the standard table view cell. I will connect the outlets in a quick minute here. So let's make the height 100, 100. Let's pin this from the top 10. We don't want the left, but we do want the right, and we want the bottom. And there we have our table view cell with the image. And let's quickly add a label. I'm going to put a label in here, and I'm going to pin this guy 10 from each side, which will be 10 from our image actually. And just to show you it's a custom cell, let's change up some of this stuff. So let's do like a different color. Let's add a background to it. Let's see this obnoxious background right here. Let's also set the number of lines to 0, which will basically allow the label to line wrap if the string is long enough. And the last thing we're going to do in here is connect the outlets that we created in the cell, right? So note that it's the cell and not the view controller. So we have this my label and my image view. So we're going to drag the connection and connect the image view like so. We will then connect the label. Cool, and now we're basically done with our custom cell. Note that in the storyboard, we don't actually have a prototype cell here. You could optionally add one and assign its class. I don't recommend doing that since it gets a little messy, and I personally like to keep things decoupled in different files. But we're gonna go back to our view controller and do two more things to get this working. So before we can actually start using this cell, we need to tell the table view that we're gonna be using the cell. And the way you do that is you register a nib for that reusable cell identifier. So if you actually see here, there is register nib, whoops, and that one, this is not the correct one because this is for the header and footer, and this is how you would do a custom header and footer. But we want to do register. It's not wanting to be helpful today in autocomplete, but we want to do register nib for cell reuse identifier, and we'll create the nib in a second, but this identifier will be the demo table view cell, which I'm going to copy and paste for sake of not misspelling it. So we're going to put the demo table view cell in here, and this is going to be a nib. So the nib we're going to create up here, which is going to be a UI nib. And it's going to be the name of the nib that we've created. The bundle you can make nil in this case. And this will basically tell the table view, get this nib file, this subclass table view cell, and register it to yourself, as in the table view. So yeah, this line is good to go. The last thing we want to do is in the actual function where we return the cell to the table view for each respective index, we want to return this identifier. And we want to return this as that particular class. So we want to dequeue this table view cell as a demo table view cell. And what this allows us to do is it'll give us access to the properties, aka the outlets that we've created on this table view cell actually. So we're going to set the table view cell's my label properties text to my data. Same thing as before. And for the sake of this video, what I'll do is I'll set the my image view's background color. Let's make it like red. So I just want to recap before we run this. I went through it fairly quickly, but in essence, all you really need to do to create a custom table view cell is three things. The first one being create your own custom cell file and a nib for it. So you're creating a subclass of this UI table view cell. Create outlets in here as if you were creating your view controller basically, but understand that these outlets are for every cell. So every cell will have these. In the nib, create those UI elements and connect those respective outlets. You can style them in here. Make sure you provide constraints. The other important thing to not neglect here is make sure you give an identifier and you know what it is. Again, it's good practice to give the same name as the name of the file. In your view controller, you want to register that file as that cell as the class you're going to be using for that respective reuse identifier. Here's how you would basically grab the nib you just created. And for those of you who don't know, a nib is just this .xib file that goes hand in hand with this Swift file. And lastly, but most importantly, when you're actually returning a cell after being dequeued, you want to make sure that you are telling the table view dequeue a cell with this identifier as this, right? So you're casting it as this class. And what that lets you do is it lets you access the outlets on that cell that you've created. So now if we actually remove this, let's just show you guys. Notice that the syntax highlighting went away and it started throwing errors because it doesn't know what those properties are, because the default return type from this dequeue function is a base UI table view cell. Now we've subclassed that class and we want to return this as a demo table view cell, which is our custom cell, which has these two properties on it, so it knows where to basically go and find them. And And last but not least, we return the cell in this function, as that is the return type here. And yeah, let's go ahead and run this. So give it just a second here. And there we go. We have our label. It's not the best of color selection on my part, but and we have our images on the right. Now you can imagine cells can get super complicated. So if you think of the Facebook app, they have a like button, a comment button, a share button. They have the person's picture, name, a variety of types of posts. So what you can actually do is, now that you understand and have seen how this whole process works, you can register multiple cells. To my knowledge, there's no limit. And in theory, you can have a variety of cells, and based on the criteria of what type of cell you want to show here, you can run some type of conditional or some type of logic in this function or elsewhere to show one cell for a particular index and another cell for another one. And if you think about it, that's how the Facebook app or any of these larger apps that heavily utilize table views are constructed. They'll use the data to basically drive the type of cell that they want to show. So yeah, without further ado, I mean, that's basically all I've had for you guys. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs below. It really helps me out. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos on Swift, on tech, on iOS specifically. Yeah, I will see you in the next one.